Let me tell you about Jin. Super smart, bilingual, super qualified. But every time she spoke in meetings, she'd ramble. Her ideas were good, but nobody could follow them. After one presentation, her manager had enough. He said, "Look, you had some good points, but it was hard to tell what you were getting at." Ouch. So we worked on one thing: organizing her thoughts before she spoke. I gave her a few simple techniques, and then 2 weeks later, she gave another update, clear and confident and structured. And her manager said, "Hey, nice job today. Super clear." It was the same Jin, just a sharper delivery. And that's the moment things started to click, not just for her manager, but for Jin too. She realized that clarity isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. So, how do you build it? That's exactly what we're diving into next. Because once you learn to organize your thoughts, your words will start doing exactly what you want them to. So, our first strategy: if you want to speak clearly in English, the first step is not vocabulary. It's clarity. You've got to know what you're trying to say before you open your mouth. So we're going to cover 4 quick methods to organize your thoughts before you speak. This is especially helpful in meetings and interviews or presentations. So focus on the structure and make the presentation, make your message easy for everyone to understand. So, tip number 1, we call this the one-sentence summary. Before you speak, ask yourself, if I had to say this in one sentence, what would it be? That is your core message, the heart of what you're trying to communicate. So let me give you an example from a client I worked with. We'll call him Carlos. He was giving weekly updates on a software rollout. His team was doing great work, but every time he spoke, he'd lose the room within 30 seconds. He'd start a timeline, then jump to a technical issue, then mention some feedback from the marketing team, all in one breath. So we changed one thing. Before every update, he wrote down a one-sentence summary. And so one day he started with this: we're on schedule, but one task is behind because of a supplier delay. And immediately everyone understood. So from there, he could go into details, but his audience already had the big picture. And as a result, meetings got shorter, but communication got sharper. So before you speak, pause and find that one clear sentence. It's a small habit, but it makes a huge difference. My next tip is called the rule of 3. People really love patterns, and the magic number 3 is truly amazing. It's easy to remember, it's easy to follow, and it feels complete. So, let me tell you about Amira. She was a marketing coordinator who had trouble keeping people engaged during her updates. So, we introduced her to the rule of 3. Before each meeting, she grouped her talking points into 3 categories. So one day she said, "Here's my view. We've seen growth in 3 sectors: customer engagement, product quality, and brand awareness. Let me break each one down." So that helped people to stay with her, and they really perked up. It kept them engaged in the process. Why? Because the structure made the message easy to digest and easier to remember. So follow that simple formula. This works for everything from presentations to updates to even everyday conversations. Simple, structured, memorable. And most importantly, it helps people remember what you said. So try that 3-point rule, okay? Next, connectors and signposts. These are like verbal road signs. because they help to guide your listener. Let me tell you about Leo. He's another guy, a project manager who was great at planning, but he really struggled to explain things in meetings. He would jump straight into updates without guiding his listeners through the structure. And as a result, people were confused. People asked questions that he had already answered, or they missed his most important points. So I started him using simple signposts to change everything. So he would begin with, first, I'll walk you through the timeline. Then we'll look at the key risks. Finally, I'll explain the client's feedback. And people were able to follow along. The questions started to drop, and the feedback started to improve. So you can use these phrases just like that. First of all, then, let's move on to, the main takeaway is, bop, bop, bop. All right? So, for example, first I'll explain the challenge. Then I'll share our approach. And finally, I'll show the results. These markers are a game changer. They will help your audience and you stay on track and build confidence in your message. People will have confidence in what you're trying to tell them. All right. Here's our fourth tip. Give yourself time to think. Here's the trick. If you get caught off guard in a question, use buffer phrases. What's a buffer phrase? That's basically a cheat. Something like, that's a great question. Let me think for a moment. Or, oh, okay, I see where you're going with that. One of my clients, Ethan, we'll call him Ethan, was a software engineer. And I coached him because he was terrified of Q&A sessions, questions and answers. He told me, I always freeze up when someone asks a question I didn't prepare for. So that's what we practiced, using buffer phrases. Just a few simple words to buy some time and breathe. And that small habit helped Ethan shift his mindset. It wasn't about having every answer ready in his head. It was about giving himself permission to think. And so one day during a big demo, a senior executive asked him something complex and unexpected. But instead of panicking, Ethan smiled and said, that's a great question. Give me a second to think about it. Then he paused mentally, sorted his answer, and delivered it smoothly. After the meeting, his boss said, wow, you handled that like a pro. So this gives you 2 to 5 seconds to think. And that is often all you need to mentally map your answer, find your core message, and then respond with confidence. It's much better to take a short pause than give a confusing monologue. Silence, when well used, can be a sign of thoughtfulness, not weakness. So, what's the big takeaway? Clear thinking equals clear speaking. When you speak English, especially in professional settings, you don't need fancy words. You need organized thoughts. Just like when you're building a house. Think about it like this. You don't start by decorating the windows. You start with the blueprint. And so your message needs a solid frame before you fill in the details. I once had a student named Amira who worked in HR. She spoke very confidently, but her updates always felt like a whirlwind. People nodded, but clearly they didn't retain anything. And so we changed one habit. She started writing out her main point before every meeting. And that one sentence became her guide. So within a month, people were quoting her ideas back to her. Her message actually stuck because it was clear. So, before your next conversation or meetings, try planning just one thing you want to say clearly. Use one of today's tips and watch it make a big difference. People listen when they can follow your message, and they follow you. They remember you. So, here's one thing that you can try out. Use the rule of 3 or a one-sentence summary in your next conversation. Keep it simple, keep it clear, and watch how people respond. If this episode helped, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who wants to speak better English. And hey, check out the full blog post at allaboutenglishmastery.com. You can also find the link in the description. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter where I've got more practical English tips waiting for you there.